Hi there. Welcome to the Sober Circle channel. Enjoy this speaker tape.
Good talk. It's a shame to screw that up. But I'm born that way. Thank you, Lord, and the committee for inviting me. I'll thank you now. You may not be here at the end. I am Jim Williams, and I'm an alcoholic. Like some of you, I was born. We don't all identify, you know. I was raised in a little county in West Texas where they didn't drink. And they talked about the Catholics that did. I didn't get to talk to the Catholics till I got to AA. None of us drank. Now I was raised, and this guy standing up there in front of all these people, just like this, pointing his finger. One more stanza for that one right back there. Your throat hurts. And not like AA. AA, they said, saw old Jim in the ditch last night. If he lives, we'll get him. But this outfit comes in on one and picks them out till they get them. I got to be about 12 years old going to that outfit. And that guy said, if you think it, you might as well have done it. I was thinking it before I even knew what it was. Saw that girl, got those funny feelings, told them about it. They said, we've been wanting to talk to you about joining up with us. I said, well, I've been wanting to, but my throat hurts every Sunday, want to do it. So I went down and walked down the aisle, and it's a lot like AA, except don't give out any chips. They come up and hug you and kiss you and throwing you in the tank. The handkerchief leaks, you choke a little bit, but you come out okay. Went to school the next day and saw that girl, came right back. I had to go back to her and say, we're going to have to do it again. Didn't take. They said, no, you just don't do it. I had no idea. I didn't know how not to do anything. I didn't know I didn't know how not to do anything. And they didn't know it. No guess. I said, well, how do you not do it? Don't think about it. My God, I got up every morning. Not going to think about it today. Thought about it yesterday. Not going to think about it today. I've not thought about it so much, thought about it all the time. I must have been thinking about it when I was asleep, because I've thought about it as soon as I waked up. Finally got through playing those little sports that was about to kill me. Well, I tried to be good in every one of them and was underneath all of them. Got to be 17 and we slipped along to the next county where they had wild and wicked places. And this guy and I slipped in that place and opened that door, and my God, there was one of those deacons with a warm girl in one hand and a cold beer in the other. I thought, my God, he's going to tell Jesus on us, and we didn't even get to do it. I should have known then, when you get caught before you do it, you ought to give it up. I only had 2 beers. They didn't taste good, didn't do anything. I watched him all the time. He didn't look at me at all, and he was happier than I'd ever seen him. I used to thought he was just sad, just cause he's in that deal. But it's cause he felt bad. I didn't know that. And the next morning I got up and I said, I want to go to church for the first time in my life. Maybe when you get old enough, you don't have to go. There he was, sitting right there, sad like he always was. Then I had my first spiritual awakening. Maybe you can do it a little bit and just don't tell anybody. So I got my buddy and I said, we're going back next Saturday night. It's a big town, had 2 joints. We're going to the other joint. And we went to the other joint, and I learned how to do everything but commit adultery that night. And I'd have done that except I was just too tied up. Didn't know how to black out, didn't know how to dance, learned how to dance, fall down the dance floor and break my nose. Learned how to do all of it. Learned how to black out, learned how to wake up the next morning and feel terrible. Didn't know how to do any of it. Learned it all at second try. I don't know where I learned it. Only been 2 places, school or church. This guy called and said, "How do you feel?" And I said, "God, I feel terrible." He said, "Yeah, but you had a great time." I said, "Oh, well." Then I knew what to do to have a good time. I did it that way every time I did it. I knew then you couldn't do it a lot, though you get caught, so I just always did it a lot when I did it. I did not know you did it any other way. I had no idea that anybody did it any other way. I never discussed it with anybody either. Well, I kept doing it till I finally got to where I had trouble doing it. And I finally went to war, and they had it, and they stayed too long. I didn't like what they did, and I came home, and they wouldn't change it, so I quit. And then I went to school. I didn't like it, and got out. And then I went to work, which I don't like that either. I'm not fitting anywhere, and everybody says you ought to do this. I didn't want to do that. They said you shouldn't do that, and I wanted to do that. Everything I wanted to do, they said I shouldn't do it. The things I didn't want to do, they said it's exactly what you're supposed to do. So I never did fit anywhere. Now I know I fit blacked out because I didn't know where I was. And that's the reason I like to black out. Finally got to losing jobs. Everybody, every place I ever wanted to work, they always wanted me to work on Mondays. I thought, God, someday I'm going to find that some company doesn't have a hang-up about Mondays. You can have the flu on Thursday, and it's okay, but never on Monday. And they always want you to work on their time, just because they own it. I don't understand that. And they do it wrong, you know. I try to explain to them how they're supposed to treat me so things will be all right and the company will be better. And I didn't notice it for a long time, but I was always the one that was leaving. Some of them are still operating, doing it wrong. Which means most of us are just too smart to be in business. And I was having a little difficulty with women. Not a lot. Just 1 year at a time. I knew you couldn't just go with anybody. Some guys I could see do that, but they were in a different religion. Mine, you had to be in love, or you couldn't go, and I knew you couldn't change women every week. It looks bad. So I just hung in that one. I don't know where I learned it. I have no idea. It's either school or church. You can put 10 pretty girls up there, and I'll get the sick one every time. I might have failed one time. One girl didn't go with it once. And then I always made sure, from then on out, I had the one where the chemistry mixed. And that's the sick one. It's a shame when you get to AA, they tell you the same thing that church did. Don't do it. My God, and they're grouped. Well, I kept doing that until I finally got to where I couldn't get a job. And I'd go to those guys, my good close friends, and I'd say, I need that job. You don't want this job. I wanted a job. And they'd say, no, you don't want this job. There was something about me they didn't want. It wasn't mad at me. There was just something about me that they didn't want. And there was something about me they didn't understand it. And they seemed a little relieved when I left. And I didn't know what that was. So I got up this morning, been out of work for about 10 days, knew you needed to eat before you drank because I was planning on drinking, you know, for a change. Hadn't been drunk since yesterday. Went out to the golf course and ate an old egg and an old piece of toast. I know his old went down old. Went around to my spiritual advisor, sold beer beside the golf course. And he said, God, you look terrible this morning. I said, I must be getting a virus. He said, I think you need a beer. And I said, it's only 9:15. I never did drink before 10:30. That's noon for Baptists, you know. Unless I was off or just wasn't tied up, you know. Drank that beer and sprayed the golf course with it. I don't mind spraying if you don't lose concentration. You know, I have a tendency to start thinking about something else while I'm still doing it, and it gets to my nose and it irritates me, you know. Because I know better. I can do it without ever getting in my nose. So I'll just pay attention to what I'm doing. And the stringy, of course, is where I learned how to meditate. You don't know where the end is, just use God in the commode. And you can't breathe, so you don't know whether you're staying or going. So I knew about meditation before I got here. I went on home and I got in the living room and I decided I love alcoholics because we can get to reality by just thinking. And we know, and it's just perfect. And I reasoned everything out and I decided that the thing for me to do was to commit suicide. And they don't teach it in church or school, you know. We're all going to need it. I don't know why they don't teach it. This was before overdose was popular. This was when you had to, all suicide was cold turkey then. I didn't have a gun. I was glad because they're noisy anyway and they splatter everything all over. No use leaving a mess, you know. Razor blades were popular then. Everybody didn't know how to do it. And you can't call anybody. Or you don't know who knows. Well, I knew, though, you couldn't do it in the living room. You get blood all over the carpet. Now, I'm always thinking of others. And I was thinking about those guys that didn't hire me. They're sure going to be sorry when they, as soon as I die, they go into my funeral. They'll say if they'd have hired me, it wouldn't have happened. So I went in the bathroom where I do a lot of meditation anyway. Got me a razor blade and sat down on the throne, cut both wrists just a little bit. I'd never done it before. I didn't know how, you know. Thought if you failed, you can always rerun it. And I'm sitting there listening to the drip. And about the time the phone rang, my God, I had to have another meeting. What if where I'm going, I always wonder who that was called? That'd be enough to run you crazy. So I put a Band-Aid on my wrist right quick and answered the phone. Well, the only reason I called on a guy like one night, he had his cut all the way over. He didn't die either. He's got a bad scar. It looked terrible. In fact, it made me sick. Of course, the guy on the phone was the police. You know, they need AA bad. They have personality changes. I never had one yet that didn't. They always wanted me to go with them. Sound kind of like preachers, you know, come go along with me. But then they have a personality change when you explain to them you're not going. Sure glad I don't have to explain things to them anymore. Well, I've been there in that town long enough anyway. Nobody'd hire me. They treated me bad and had $36. It's time to regroup. So I just left town. Just didn't go see him. Guy wanted me to come down there or come out here. I didn't like either one of the choices, so I just left. And then I'm only 33, 34. So I haven't totally gotten away from my parents yet. I'm really thinking about, if I can get a little close to Social Security, I'm thinking about weaning away from them now, though. So I ran out of money the next morning on my trip. So I went by and did my little thing. I finally found out why I always cried at the end of my stories. Because alcoholics never have a bad story. It's always horrible. Never had a bad story in my life. And at the end of it, it's so sad and it's true. That God, no wonder they come up with 100. But I always cried and gave them the full treatment. I never shortchanged my folks. And the next day I told them I'd never drink again. But drinking was not my problem. Never was. It was not my problem. I had a problem, but it was those folks treating me the way they did. Well, I ended up finally getting married at 35. Alcoholics are fantastic at romance. I was living a life of I don't know. I didn't get to find out, and they don't have to make amends. I'd call, and I'd say, about 4 o'clock, see you about 7:30. Maybe 3 or 4 days before I got by there. But we're busy. Now, I thought about getting there, and I thought about what we was going to do after I got there. And I thought about it all the time. I had a hard time getting there. A lot of times when I got there, I never did find out what we did. And you can't call back the next morning and say, we have a good time last time? Do anything? You never get to know. This girl and I finally got married. We had 3 good fights. And the last one did it. Had it in the bathroom. And I don't recommend that. Especially if your equilibrium's not good. Because when you fall around in there, those surfaces are firm. You just don't hit that bath mat very often. And we looked bad the next morning. The preacher talked to us. We were so bad. And he thought it was time we were settling down, and so did I. I needed a drink bad. And it was one of those nights that I knew I was going to leave early the next morning because I still had my clothes on. I didn't know where I was supposed to go, but I always wake up when I had my clothes on. I knew, I'll bet you I'm supposed to be somewhere. Everybody that knew us, that came to the wedding, the longest bet was 3 weeks. But being a person who could not make a mistake, we hung in there for 8 years. We developed such a deep hate for one another that we were safe because the one that died first won. My life really changed. I had no idea how great it was to throw up in peace. I was always going to quit smoking. I'd grab that cigarette and coffee and go in the bathroom and gag and throw up, and then she's telling me what I am through that door. I've got to get upset, go to work, run out, get drunk, come home, tell her what she is. We did that one day at a time. Lost that job. Got another one. Took me 2 months and got to go to work for a man who ran a drug company. And he was a drunk like me. I interviewed, was a simple interview like alcoholics make. Why don't you meet me at the cafe instead of meeting me at the office? About 10:30, which is the right time. Walked in, he says, you want a beer? And I said, 1. We went out, it's near the coast, and we went out to look at the territory. We didn't get to see it, but we were looking for it. We got on this island and had a sandwich about 3. And a guy wanted to demonstrate a boat about 8. Had a boat wreck about 8:15. We'd picked up 2 girls from Kansas. They'd never been in a boat, and I thought they needed to go. We were 3 of us in the front were knocked out. We'd eaten the windshield and just ran into one of those pilings out there. I don't know why they had them out there. Got to the hospital at 2 a.m. and some idiot called our wives. She came and checked the women out first. And I got the job. As long as you know how to interview, you're all right. Had all three men, all three different hospitals. We were from different little old towns. Insurance men interviewed all three of us separately, and none of us had had but 2 beers. Didn't take that guy long to ship me out of that part of Texas. And he sent me out in West Texas, where nobody wanted to go. I thought it was because he wanted me to learn the business. And then I had a problem. You can't stand in drugstores and drink beer and whiskey. They don't do that in drugstores. And I'd get extremely nervous, have vibrations and things, just standing in the middle of the floor. Wasn't even thinking about it. I could have it. And this guy says, "You sure are nervous." I said, "I believe I'm going to fly apart." He said, "Take some of these." This was before Valium. They say it's better. You can even cross your eyes with that and see. I had to settle for Librium. You had to take them in groups. Used to tickle me to death when the guy says, "I'm short on 10s, will 25s be all right?" "Oh, yeah, be fine." So I took Librium in the daytime and had a new deal. I knew how to weave without falling most of the time. If I failed, just because I kind of wanted to. But then you got a new deal, you know. You wait 15 seconds, doesn't happen, take 2 more, and then finally your knees just go. So I had to learn new stance. But I knew how to do it. Didn't take me too long. And I knew how to take Librium in the daytime and drink beer at night. And if I wanted to go to bed early, just switch to bourbon. Get in early. I never did like a lot of decisions anyway. You had one. You're going to stay on beer, you stay up, go to switch to bourbon, go home early. Well, some guy offered me a job back in Houston. They hadn't seen me in 15 years. Well, I got the job, went to the company in Huntington, Indiana, and they said, "We don't know why you're here." I didn't either. I didn't even know what they did, but I couldn't tell them. God, they've been in business 50 years. I don't know what they're doing. They know I know, and I don't know. So I had to get the job without letting them know I didn't know what they did. Got it. Sent me back to Houston. I lasted 9 months. Had me a good system going. I did not get drunk in front of my customers. Just drank like a little nice guy. Left them, went home. I ripped bow on the way home, blacked out, and went on home like you're supposed to. Did that every day. Every day I could. Didn't know you did it any other way. I knew I had 2 problems, her and work. And I was always underfinanced. Outside of that, I'm fine. If I could have been financed, I believe I could have died drunk without any trouble at all. Been dead now. The day before Christmas Eve of 1965, played golf with these people, customers, and blacked out their home and drove from one side of Houston to the other, which was nothing new for me. I drove blackout many, many times. Many times. Waked up just like you're supposed to in total fright. Didn't even have to pray for it, just had it. Cars back, parked funny, go out and walk around it. No fenders are okay, no blood. Done that 1,000 times. But I was really living a miserable life. Oh, what's her name went next door. This isn't her I'm with, by the way. She went next door, they were going to have a party. I didn't mind going to parties where she was if it was my night. Sometimes I was having one somewhere else. And I don't know whether I heard it on the radio or where I heard it. But I looked up, and I'm not an alcoholic. The only alcohol I ever knew was a guy We slept downtown, this little old town, and drank wine and bay rum, and I never did drink bay rum. So I wouldn't be an alcoholic. And I didn't look like I knew he looked. And I never changed my image. That's what an alcoholic was to me, and nothing different. I looked up under Intergroup, under Alcoholics Anonymous, and called the number. And this girl said, "Hi," like she was glad I called. I knew then there's something wrong with her. Somebody will be right out. Well, I wait an hour and nobody shows. Found out later on they were matching on the phone. And the one that lost is coming after me. The guy called back and said, "I'll be right there." And I said, "I started telling him I didn't need him," and he hung up. Then I didn't know where I called. I looked in the icebox and had 3 beers, and it's 10:15. I just don't need him. It's Christmas Eve anyway. And he, sure enough, man, he gets out of that car and he looks like that deacon. Short, pointed nose, book under his arm, and I said, "Oh, my God." We're going to pray and we're going to read that book. You know, I've not only been baptized, I've been rededicated 10 times. Well, he opened that door, didn't read that book, we didn't pray, didn't ask me any questions. About that time, old what's-her-name came in, he said, "You want to go with me?" And I didn't, but it's better than staying with her. I got in that car with him, and we hit that freeway, and total fright set in. Here I am going off with a perfect stranger, don't know who he is. He's not my kind of guy. He's one of them sour, pussy-looking guys. And I said, "I'll buy a beer." He said, "I don't want a beer." And I knew it. By God, total fright came in again. And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but I got bad drunk last night, and I've got to have a beer." He said, "Can you wait till we get to the club?" I said, "Oh, yeah, I can do that." I don't mind total fright if there's a little light. When there's no light, it bothers me. He drove and drove and finally drove in a kind of a bad neighborhood. Drove up to an old-looking house. There's a couple of cars there that look like mine, but there's a few that look pretty good. And I thought, well, when I get some money, I'll help these folks. Opened the door, and there was those deacons sitting over there talking about the women in the stock market, and I found out later on they didn't know anything about either one. There's an old bar back there in the back with an old piece of linoleum on it. And the bartender didn't look a hell of a lot better than I did. And he looked at that bartender just as serious. He said, "Mix him up a little milk and honey." I said, "My God, what do you put in it?" I never drank anything like that in my life. He said, "Well, you see, you're nervous." I said, "That's what I've been trying to tell you." And besides all that, you've been used to sugar in your system for alcohol, and the honey's already been digested. I said, "Indigestion's not my problem. You know, if you throw up right, you don't have indigestion." So they handed it to me. I drank half of it, and it curdled, came right back up. One of those guys says, "Don't worry about it, we have plenty." I thought, well, I guess I'm going to put on a show for him, I guess. And the guy says, "Walk all you want to." I didn't want to walk at all. In fact, I wanted to go home. Get in my car like you're supposed to. They kept me there all day long. And he took me back at 6 o'clock, said, "Eat something if you can. I'll pick you up an hour. We'll go to a meeting." I said, "Where?" He said, "Right back where we were." And I said, "My God, we was there all day." Took me back that old 4-hour meeting. I know it's 4. They said it's an hour, but I know it's 4. After it was over, a bunch of girls and boys got together and they're laughing, hugging and kissing, taking off in those cars. I said, well, when you're here long enough, you get to go have a little drink and do whatever you're supposed to do. You just don't let you in right at first. You have to go through this deal. I kept going. I went every night. Then I heard one of them say, let me have them for 30 days. That's all I need them. I said, well, he ain't going to get me. Another one said, I like them for 90. I said, I know he's not going to get me. Went for 3 months every night, twice on Sunday. Nothing happened. Everything was going on, but nothing was happening. I was fine. I was just totally miserable 24 hours a day. Didn't see anything attractive about them. The old house looked bad as ever did. So I went home, got mad to old what's-her-name, went out and got drunk. Didn't take but a few seconds, just say hello, that's it. Next morning, waked up in another town, had to come back, crawl through the crack there. You don't even have to open the door. Just cockroach, get out of the way, old Jim's back. And they put their arm around you and say, oh, we're glad to see you. Everything's going to be all right. Hell, it ain't going to be all right. Wasn't all right enough here before. Went 3 more months, went to a convention. I said, how do you work convention? I asked those salesmen. I asked 5 salesmen. None of them knew. The only thing they said was, don't drink and call AA. I said, hell, I know that. What do you do? None of them knew. So I drove up to Dallas, got out, went in the hotel. The guy said, let's have a drink. I walked on in. I said, I'll buy you a drink. Sit down. He said, bartender, what do you want to drink? Coffee. We don't have any coffee in here. I said, Coke. This guy said, you don't want to drink anything? One beer. And then I went back, crawled back in there, had to stay drunk 4 days. Walked back in there. This guy said, we really have a problem with you. We don't know how to give this program to you. I said, what do you mean? I'm going to meeting every night. He said, yeah, but we gave you 2 things to do, and you forgot both of them. We don't know how to give it to you any lighter than that. We gave you 1 thing not to do and 1 thing to do, and you didn't do either one of them. I don't like them. I'm ready to quit anyway. So I went 3 more months and got drunk, and then I wasn't coming back. And this guy called me, and I sobered up, and he said, you going to AA tonight? And I said, no, not going anymore. Doesn't work. Besides that, I know the only thing wrong with me is I've just always been underfinanced. If I can get some money, I'm going to leave the whole show. We're out in New Mexico, I understand you can hide out there. This guy said, I'd like for you to go with me. I got drunk. My wife was working and I was off. And I got drunk for a week and I'd like for you to go back. I said, if it's going to help you, I'll go. If you'll make it perfectly clear I've resigned and I'm not going anymore outside of tonight. That slip he had, I found out later, was 3 years ago. They don't lie to you. They just don't tell you all the truth. After that mean guy came up to me and said, don't call me ever again. I said, God, I'm glad you said that. I didn't call you in the first place. I never liked you from the first day I saw you. And if I had as bad a personality as you do, I'd go back to drinking. And you don't ever have to worry about it again. I'll never call you again as long as I live. And I didn't until the next morning. I called him and he said, meet me at the club. And I walked through the door of that club and he said, get your coffee and sit down. I don't like him telling you what to do all the time. Besides that, he's a Presbyterian. He said, I want you to look at me straight in the eye. You've been here 9 months, and you haven't heard one single thing. And I'm going to tell you something that you haven't heard. There's no failure in Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous does not fail. There's absolutely no failure. In Alcoholics Anonymous, Al-Anon, Al-Ateen, Al-Atot, or Al-Adog. Just doesn't fail. Provided you do what we tell you to do, it won't fail. If you do it a little bit, it won't work. So we're going to give you a decision to make. You're going to do exactly what I tell you to do, the way I tell you to do it, or go right back out that door. I said, I don't want to do either one. He said, I did not ask you what you wanted to do. I just asked you what you were going to do. I said, do you not care whether I want to do it or not? He said, not a bit. I said, do you mean to tell me I can do this and not want to? He said, certainly. I said, well, then I'll do it. I said, well, what is it now I'm supposed to do? He said, well, we're going to give you some things not to do. Then we're going to give you some things to do. Now, the things you're not going to do are going to change. But the things you're going to do, you just do that for the rest of your life and add to it. Then it's going to happen over here. I said, what's going to happen over there? We don't know. I said, my God, if you don't know, who knows? He said, oh, we'll know. I said, when? Right after it's happened. I said, I don't understand anything you're saying to me. He said, now you got it. I said, nobody listens to me here. You didn't even hear me. I said, I do not understand what you're telling me. And he said, that's it, and don't you ever forget it. There's two things you got to remember in Alcoholics Anonymous for the rest of your life. In the first place, no matter what goes on any day from now on out, you do not understand. And the day that comes that you don't try to, you're really going to enjoy it. And the other thing is, no matter what's going on in your life, it's never her, it's never them, it's never the situation, and it's never God. It's you that must become different. No matter who he is. I said, you mean to tell me I'm always wrong? He said, has nothing to do with who's right or wrong. It's just that whatever situation you're in, you need to stay in it until you become different. And as you become different, your situations will change. So see, what your biggest problem is, you don't think right. I said, what do you mean I don't think right? You just don't think right. I said, about what? He said, about what goes on. I said, where? He said, wherever you are. I said, well, how much of my thinking's wrong? He said, we always start with all of it. And if there's any good, we'll let you know. I really want to quit them lots of times. And he said, you see, the thing that's going to ruin you, the thing that got you here, and the thing that's going to keep you from getting everything that you want is this one thing. As long as you know, you'll never know. And until you do the things we tell you not to do the way we tell you not to do them, and do the things we tell you to do the way we tell you to do them, then you'll never know. But when you begin to do that, and you begin to know you don't know, then you'll begin to know. I said, hell, you're crazy. And he said, I know. I said, okay, what is it? What is it you want me to do? He said, first I'm going to tell you what not to do and how to not do it. And you've got to not do it the way I tell you not to do it, or it won't give you what you want. And I don't even know what I want now. He said, now here's the way we're going to not drink or take a mind-changing drug. You know those 4 numbers those guys I've got besides mine? I said, yeah. When you get squirrely, not before you take a drink, way before you take a drink. The minute you start to get squirrely, you either call me, call one of these numbers, come to this club, or go to in a group or call in a group. When you get squirrely, before you take anything and when you get squirrely, you don't gut this thing out, you don't do it on your own. If you gut it through that day, you didn't do it right. You've got to call me or somebody else or make the call. I said, what if you're not there? He said, I said, make the call. I said, doesn't it make a difference? He said, doesn't make a bit of difference. Make the call or come to the club. And then here's what we're going to do every day for the rest of our lives. In the morning when you get up, before you do one single thing, I want you to get down on your knees and say these words and these words only. God, take me today and let me be what you want me to be. Let thy will only be done in my life. Help me to definitely not take a drink of anything alcoholic or a mind-changing drug today. Amen. You don't need to tell God anything else. He can handle the rest of it all by himself. Then call me before you go to the bathroom. I said, why before I go to the bathroom? You may not need to go. I said, do you mean to tell me that you don't think I've got sense enough to know I need to go to the bathroom? He said, we'll find out. I said, Hal, you're trying to eliminate me. And he said, that's right. And if we could eliminate you, we'd have it in 1 week. Well, I got on my knees. Before I got on my knees the next morning, I said, God, you and I know He's a Presbyterian, you know. We know this don't work. We've been praying for years, long ones. We know it doesn't work, but just to prove it, we'll do what he says. Got out on my knees, did him a little deal, picked up the phone, called him, said, go to the bathroom. Didn't even ask where I need to go or not. Meet me at the club. Met him at the club, he said, go to work. But I hate my job. I don't know how to go to work. Go get in the car. Oh, well, I just... that's the reason I couldn't go to work. I didn't know how. They told me, I'd just go get in the car and go. I didn't know. And meet him back at the club. Met him back at the club, 4:30. There we were. Go get your coffee and sit down. I know to get the coffee. They got to tell you. Go get your coffee and sit down. Have a cup of coffee. Go home and eat. Come back to the meeting. I know to do that. They got to tell you. Hell, they got to tell you. I come back to the meeting and sit through that 4 or 5 hour meeting. They're all laughing and getting the cars and leaving me out. He said, now go home and thank God for the day. I said, I do not thank God for the day. He said, you mean you're not sincere? I said, yeah, I don't mean it at all. He said, that's fine. I said, does it make a difference whether I mean it or not? He said, not a bit. Said, remember, it's only the action that's going to make you different. Has nothing to do with your thinking. The only way you're going to be acting against your thinking most of the time. But the action's going to make you different. You get this one place and one way only. You can't learn it. They can't teach it to you. There's no way in the world for you to get it by studying it, memorizing the book. You get it through the experience only. It's the only way you get it. You can't shortcut it. You can't get it any other way. Well, I just got in the car and went home, got to the side of the bed. I said, okay, by God, thank you for another miserable damn day. Didn't make any difference. Nope. I said, what are you going to do about old what's-her-name? You know, give them the tough stuff. They're going to be smart. He said, I'm not going through that with you. He said, I'm going to send you to a guy that's already worked his out, and I'm not messing with mine. And I went to that guy, and that guy said, before I take you on, what do you want? I said, I'll tell you what I want. I want the relationship with one woman that I've seen some other men have. And he says, are you willing to go to any length for that? And I said, yeah. I wasn't, but I told him what. I'd tell him anything now, you know. I never had the right answer anyway. You told them no, they'd say that's right. You tell them yeah, they'd say that's right. So I didn't tell them anyway. He said, if you're willing to make the lonesome walks it takes to become different, you'll either have it with the same one or a different one, and won't make any difference. He said, half the people they are already married right when they get here. Some of them are not. Some of them should never be married. But we have a way to find that out. We don't give it advice, but we have a way for you to find out from the master counselor only. God himself will let you know as you become different. And I said, will that really work? He said, yeah, there's going to be some things we're going to not do and do. I said, hell, I knew that. And another thing, if you're really willing to do this, and you really want to go this system, and you really want to become committed through the action you're going to have to take, and the action of not doing is going to be your hardest action, I'll not only guarantee you a relationship with a woman that you've never had nor dreamed of, I'll guarantee you a relationship with your fellow man you couldn't have imagined, and I'll give you a bonus. A relationship with God that you could have not thought for you could ever be possible. Well, I don't believe that. And he said, "You don't need to." I said, "What do you mean by that?" And he said, "We don't depend on you at all here. We just depend on us and God." And I said, "Leave me out." And he said, "That's it." I said, "Well, what is it I got to do?" He said, "First of all, it's what you've got to learn not to do. And you'll have to learn to do this no matter who you live with. To be able to live with a woman and to have that type of relationship that you're talking about, you must do these things. First of all, you're never going to tell her again what's wrong with her." I said, "Never?" He said, "Never." I said, "Not at all? Who's going to tell her?" He said, "I don't know, but you're not." And we're never going to do something to try to work her around to do something your way so y'all will be better. I said, "Never?" He said, "Never." "And you're going to pray for her?" I said, "I'm not." He said, "Yes, you are, and you're going to say these words. God, thy will be done for her as well as for me." I said, "I do not want his will to be done for her as well as for me." He said, "Remember, we're not asking you what you wanted." Well, I did it. And I had a bad case. I didn't know I had such a bad case. I got up in the morning, I couldn't tell her hello or nothing. I just shoot out the door. Of course, I didn't know I had it so bad, telling her what she was, poor thing. And she didn't know what to do, I'm sure, because I left, she didn't know what she was. Wasn't too long after that I found out I had this thing, whatever it is, whatever my love, lust, sickness was with women, and I had it. And I told him, and I hurt, and I told him, and I kept hurting, and I told him, and I kept hurting, and I kept telling him, and it didn't do any good, so I told the group. And that didn't do any good, so I slipped over and told another group, and one of them snitched on me. I like Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon because we do not gossip. We're only concerned. He finally, after that guy snitched on me, said, "I want you to go home and lock that apartment up, and you and God wrestle over that till you get rid of that." And God removes that from you. We don't want to hear another word about it. You're living in the sickness by talking about it. And I went home, and God, I prayed those long Baptists and everything else I could think of, cussed and cried and did everything. Next morning, wasn't there. God, I was afraid to go anywhere. Afraid if I saw a pretty girl and come back. Didn't. Went to a meeting, went to 3 meetings, didn't tell him. Hell with him, wasn't going to tell him. After the 3rd meeting, I thought, well, I'll tell him. I said, well, I guess I better tell you. He said, oh, we knew it the first night. I said, why didn't you tell me? Well, we thought maybe you was a little upset. We let you run your deal. I said, just remember, we'll always know before you know. I said, why is that? He said, well, I don't know. Well, we just know that before, you always have to be last before you can be first. So you'll just always have to be last. So no, we'll already know. Well, it wasn't too long after that, you know, what's her name, got a divorce. She's the same lawyer. She just had to explain to him what a nice guy was first. Took about an hour. I didn't know I was that nice. And then I ran into this girl that called on her in the hospitals, and they would not let me go with anybody. I explained to them I was not sleeping with what's her name. They said, that's good. If I'd said I was, they said, that's good. And I needed to go with this other girl, ask them about her, and they said, God, no, don't do it. And I was having brain damage, not doing it. I got relief from drinking.
Looked like after about 6 months, I'd been calling on this girl in the hospital. And I'd seen her one day in the hall, and that kind of came to me. I said, you know, that's the type of girl I'd always wanted. But it didn't mean that was her. And then it looked like something was going to happen. Somebody accused us of going together, and I said, something looks like what's going on with us. I told her one night, about 3 months before, I said, you know, I think I love you. I never tell her more than 3 months. And then I said, but I'm an alcoholic. I go to meetings 7 days a week. I go every night and twice on Sunday and sometimes twice on Saturday. So all I do is work and go to AA. Don't do another single thing. And I'm an alcoholic, and that shocks one of those Baptist civilians. They look funny. And I said, besides all that, my sponsor won't let me have an affair. I'm only 45, you know. So she said, well, what's it all about? Well, I don't know. You know, they smoke a lot and drink a lot of coffee and go out and eat ice cream now, and they cuss a lot and talk about God. You know, I don't know. I said, I'll have to call my sponsor. So I called him, and he said, what have you been doing? I said, I haven't been doing nothing. He said, bring her over here. I said, you'll have to go see my sponsor. She looks funny, but she goes. And we go over there, we go in this little onesie meal, and they just leave me out, talk for an hour and a half. I said, hell, I believe he's going with her. They miss good points, and I start to say something, shut me up. And then he said, you know, God might be going to do something for you, but we don't know. I thought, well, you know, I'll just go sign old Lauren's name. I know how to get them going. You know, I used to get them going. We'd be told in love in 6 weeks to just deteriorate from there on out, you know. They said, no, you got to leave it alone. I said, why? Well, she's got to get into Al-Anon. She may not like it. She may not know anything about alcohol. She may not like it. She's going to have to be an Al-Anon. You're going to have to have God, AA, and Al-Anon in your home. You can't have it. God, bread and Damon's come in again. Here I am, going crazy again. And I told her how to go to Al-Anon. I got in my deal. I just go in there and tell them your name's Eloise, you want to find out about alcohol. Don't tell them nothing else. They ask you, just say, well, I'm thinking about marrying an alcoholic. And she did. And they spent that meeting telling her why she shouldn't. I told her not to tell them who it was, because I didn't want them screwing around with our deal. God, I'd love to run everything, and I think, God, just let me put some stuff together. I was driving on there, I said, God, please let me. No, I said, no, you won't let me. Well, we lasted about 5 or 6 months, and I took her to an open meeting, and she heard the alcoholic. She heard her program was available. She went back to that meeting and said she wanted that program that they had. And we converted that Baptist. My second sponsor was Episcopalian. He said, it seems like the Catholics and the Baptists have the hardest time getting God in their life, but when we can get them converted, they're just great. It wasn't too long after that we were put together. They taught us how to pray together. They taught us what to say. Before we got together, we were praying together. We did the best we could to let old Jim leave it alone long enough for God to put that together. And I'm very grateful today that after all those years and all those things I had with all those girls, or how many there was, that I now have that one relationship that only God gives one man and one woman. It's totally free, and it's really true. God and Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon live in my home. And my home's free, and my home's easy, and I am in love for the first time, and I didn't know anything about it. And I knew everything about it. She had 3 children. 2 of them were already married, and the daughter married later. She had to turn them all loose. The older one is a Baptist minister. I gave him the big book. He thought we was claiming salvation, but I gave him the 12 and 12, and he liked that. Then when he finally gave up and called her one night and said, "Mother, tell Jim he's right. I can save him, but I can't keep him sober." So he started taking them to AA, and they're now in Venezuela. But he had a hard time with us. Hard time accepting this. Took over a year. But he had a daughter that finally came up to me and threw her arms around me and called me Papa Jim. Then it dawned on me that God and I have got to get together for me to start being a father and a grandfather. And I don't know how to be any of that. So I had to start asking God and my sponsor to let me come up with my side of this deal. And it scares me not to be able to do that. So they came around, and the middle son didn't have any trouble buying us at all. He had 2 children, a boy and a girl. The boy was about 3 at the time, and I was trying to figure out how I could throw him in that pool, and they wouldn't know it. But 3 years later, he came to see us, after many times, and he walked in and said, "Nana, I'm sleeping with Papa Jim tonight. I don't know where you're going to sleep." And then the daughter went with an old long-haired boy that smoked pot. And Eloise had a hard time turning her loose and letting her go, but she did. She heard a few things I said, but we didn't know that. That boy sobered up, didn't go to AA, listened to some of the things we said, cut his hair, went back to school. She had put him through school. They now have a baby that Eloise, they wanted her down there and had me to come down there, and they make sure I see that baby every 2 months. Because that daughter who you couldn't stand before is now an absolute delight to be around. She's finally coming to me instead of her daddy, and we didn't choose that. And she says she wants to make sure that I see that grandbaby every 2 months. And if we don't go down there, they come up there. They live in Houston, we live in Fort Worth. And I now know one thing about you and I, that we didn't get here by anything we did at all. We just needed to do what we need to do to get here, because you and I were chosen by God, and we're His people. And we needed to be together, and we couldn't find each other. So He sent us to meet with each other. That we were chosen to be His, and that you and I are right on time. It didn't make one bit of difference whether I had a family before or after. I have one now, and that's if I've been with them all my life. And any of my past and women and all, as if it's never been. So I know today that I know that you and I were chosen by God. We were chosen to be in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's our way of life. And it never fails us. Once I pick up the phone to call my sponsor, God's never failed to make the connection, and He comes in. It's never failed for us to meet together. And I could never understand why I could not have a relationship with God. I tried over and over and over again, but I could not have one. And then after I stayed with you long enough to find out that there's no way to have a relationship with God without a relationship with your fellow man. And you tricked me into that. I didn't even know that's what you was doing to me. I didn't know you was loving me when there's nobody could stand me. And you tricked me into going and loving one of you when nobody could stand you. And I didn't know that's what I was doing. Then I knew the only one thing that God has for his people, that he had for you and I. And he had it and lived with us all the time. We just didn't know it till we got together. And the whole secret of my life now is what God has to offer his people, which is you and I. That one thing I could never have, and the one thing being a person chosen by God, I could not live without. And that's what you and I have. And we had it automatically when we walked through the door and didn't even know it. When I stayed with you long enough to feel God loving me and be capable of feeling me loving him. But see, the difference in my life was when I got to you and stayed long enough to feel it like it is right now, when I can feel you loving me and me loving you. Thank you very much.